Afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the SD-WAN session with Juniper. We're finally getting to the business end of the day. It's been a wild virtual experience, should we call it that? I've got Lee from his bubble in Melbourne. He's in his loft, sitting there with a little bit of afternoon sun on the face. He's going to be taking us through the SD-WAN simplified. How's things there today, Lee?
Yeah, it's good. It's good. We've actually got some okay weather today. Thankfully, I don't know how you guys are faring at the moment over there, but the sun is poking through. I'm loving it.
Fantastic, fantastic. Just a bit of housekeeping. We've got a Q&A session here open, so it'd be great to get some questions coming through for us later. We won't answer them during the presentation. I want to get everyone focused on Lee and his presentation. And there is a Prezi card up for grabs as well. So there is that, and there's also a survey question at the end of that to be done. So we're getting closer to Dave Rosenberg's virtual drinks this afternoon. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Lee. Lee, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Gary. And yeah, I guess welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I've got the pleasure of chatting with everybody here about SD-WAN, particularly in the theme or context of SD-WAN simplified. So I'm not sure if everyone or many folks here have potentially been exposed or have seen what Juniper's been doing in the market around SD-WAN, but hopefully today gives you a little bit of info, a little bit of insight to how we're tackling the idea of SD-WAN a little bit differently. And if anyone attended the earlier session today from a colleague of mine, Matt Fowler, who did a the Juniper Mist AI presentation. There's some commonalities, common themes between the two here that we'll certainly see. So yeah, without further ado, let's jump on into it. So the agenda that we're going to run through today is we'll just introduce the idea of just why SD-WAN, why are customers and enterprises and service providers around the world looking at SD-WAN as a technology? What are some of the business drivers for that? We'll get into some ideas and discussion there about this measuring user experience and what that means. How do we, rather than just plumb a network, how do we actually understand the users and how they're experiencing and using those networks? And that'll kind of lead us into that discussion around this concept of software-defined enterprise. Juniper being Juniper, quite unique in the market where we have sort of multiple elements of the stack, if you will. So it sort of gives us a unique proposition and a unique position to be able to tie and pull a bit of an ecosystem together there. And we'll close that with a bit of a wrap up and Q&A at the end as well. So please, yeah, if you've got questions, send them on through and we'll try and get them all answered. So yeah, this idea of SD-WAN evolution and why SD-WAN, just for the business folks or people that are a bit closer to the business side of this, I guess we've traditionally, as an enterprise or as a business or an organization, traditionally had a number of challenges, if you will, over the years. These are common themes across many verticals, but certainly just that idea of managing cost is certainly a big driver of a business for embarking on new technology projects. From an SD-WAN standpoint here, this is where we start to bring in the conversation and discussion around using additional bandwidth and additional WAN circuits as if they were a business service and sending business critical applications over those paths. So I'm talking here potentially lower cost links or additional services that we may not have used in the past there. Just to call a couple more out here, where we're talking about introducing new sites, and this is kind of that point about business agility, being able to respond faster to our competitors, whether our competitors, your competitors, our collective competitors that are out there in the market, whether that's retail competitors, whether that's in logistics or manufacturing or really any vertical, any industry at all. We need, as a business, to be agile and be able to respond quickly when there are issues in the business, or that could be for internal stakeholders like employees or external stakeholders or external folks like customers as well. Because certainly if either of those are having a bad experience from our service, if you will, that certainly is a block to protecting our customer base and acquiring new customers as well. So yeah, certainly we want to be able to roll out services faster, whether that's spinning up new stores or branches or offices, or rolling out additional services like security in a quick hitless zero touch type of fashion. So I'll come to some of these shortly. And another one here around assuring business services and business critical traffic. So, of course, we don't want to introduce technology and cause issues or be an inhibitor to the business at the same time. So if we are looking at using high bandwidth, low cost services where we may not have used them before, we need techniques and abilities to certainly guarantee and assure traffic over those paths, because again, if there are issues, then that can certainly have a detrimental impact to the brand of the business or our ability to service our customers. So there's a few, as I say, there's a few general challenges here. There's a mixture of costs. How do we introduce new sites and features? How do we manage an expanding organisation at the same time? So yeah, there's a few challenges there. Certainly, these are some of the points SD-WAN really helps us hit on and close off. So if we look quickly at just the architecture of an enterprise network for a moment, there's many layers. There's a mixture of branch offices. There's a mixture of headquarters offices. There's home offices, which certainly we're using a lot of these days, today, in the current environment that we're in. You've got public clouds, you've got data center, you've got private clouds, you've got a whole mixture. The detail here isn't really that important. It's what is, I guess, the point of this is that really what we're here to service and to do is link and connect users to applications, and they want to be able to access them, whatever the application is, whenever they want and wherever they are, remote or internal to the organization, or a remote customer accessing an application that you're hosting or exposing to them. So the layers of this isn't overly important, but that user experience is the way that we're certainly trying to look at tackling this. Which kind of leads us into that discussion around really what can possibly go wrong end to end when these users are accessing those applications. You kind of double click on each of these layers for a moment, and certainly we may have a wireless LAN segment if we're certainly talking about a corporate side of the business. There's probably some wired segments there, which is the physical switches. We've probably got an edge like a router or an SD-WAN edge device or a firewall there. And then you sort of pop up over those WAN services that you're buying from a third-party provider, maybe a few third-party providers rather than just one third-party provider. And then you go right up over that WAN to your data centers or to the public cloud, etc. So when we kind of double-click for a moment on each of these layers here, and we ask that question, what can possibly go wrong? Unfortunately today, there are a large number of answers and responses to that. So for operations teams to respond quickly can be quite challenging. So that's why we're sort of asking that question ourselves, what can possibly go wrong here, and what tooling and what methods can we use to get a granular level of visibility and also to allow us as organizations to respond faster. So at the end of the day, as I say, it's all about that user experience. So we want to end and change the way that we design and run networks today. So traditional networks, in our view, we would design them to be up and available. You'd put HA into various layers. You'd build fault recovery and resiliency plans, etc. But up isn't, as I say, isn't the same as good. So this is where we want to try and change that conversation to, okay, let's make an available and a highly available network, but let's at the same time pull out data points and telemetry that help us expose what it means for our users to be having a good experience over those networks and over those paths. And of course, if we take that previous diagram for a moment, it can be quite difficult to troubleshoot and certainly configure. Because, as I say, as these things have grown over time, the sprawl has got quite complex and tricky as well. And these last two around limited insight and IT as a help desk or as a group within the business. Typically, we'll wait for users to complain and then fix the issues kind of post-fact. So we're looking to try and flip that on its head and get more proactive in the way that we enable operations and IT teams to respond to user complaints or issues. So what I mean by that is if we can be measuring, if you will, service levels of the users and the applications as they're flowing through the network in real time, and measure all sorts of different data points that previously we would have ignored, I'll talk about and I'll show you some of those shortly, then we can certainly get that really powerful insight into the user's point of view. If we look for a moment here, just at the SD-WAN architecture, where does SD-WAN plug into this? So SD-WAN's in a bit of a unique position where it connects to our WAN services, whether they are like a UFB, NBN type services, or 4G LTE and private MPLS. Certainly, we probably had quite a large number of private MPLS services delivered to branches or offices that would give us that private connectivity and guaranteed SLA service to the data center. But now we're starting to talk about this concept of introducing additional services to complement those MPLS services as well, so that we can perhaps use them for techniques like locally breaking out traffic, so that it can go directly to, say, Amazon, or be an alternative path over an internet service back to the data center as well. And what I mean by that is a complement is, certainly in our eyes, MPLS still has a role to play there. It's a hardened network. It's one with some high-level SLAs that have been built over the years. So certainly let's use it where appropriate, where it makes sense there. So yeah, that's where we talk about this, combining all of these services, these underlay services, if you will, into one singular fabric. So irrespective of what that technology is under the hood, we have this SD-WAN fabric running that allows us to connect these disparate locations together into a coherent network. And then secondly, allows us to apply those telemetry and insights that we perhaps haven't had before. So that is end-to-end, all the way from the branch, from the users that are connecting at the wireless access layer, wireless access point, Wi-Fi layer, right up into whether it's Amazon or Azure, or right up into your own private data centers where the apps are, and measuring that telemetry end-to-end there. The second piece to this as well was around the zero-touch provisioning and the agility side of the business. So that being able to deploy these endpoints, these SD-WAN endpoints, which for Juniper is the SRX series that I'll come to in a moment, and being able to spin that up, send it out with almost straight from factory, straight from an order, straight from factory to the branch site, and it will reach out to the cloud, say, here I am, here's my serial number, who am I and what do I need to do? And that's where you're modeling in that orchestrator or controller that is CSO in the middle of the diagram here. It has that model. That's where you've modeled the branch sites, whether it's a small, medium, or large type of site, and it will inherit and get all of its relevant config parameters from there. So we want to change the conversation from just routing, like if there was a router at that endpoint or a firewall at that endpoint. We want to change the conversation from just doing BGP routing and static routing and that sort of thing into writing SLAs. So from that controller there, this is where we write and define a service level agreement for the applications that are critical for the business. And for the technical folks on the call, you may go, oh, this sounds an awfully lot like quality of service, which sure, yes, it is. But we're talking at a higher layer here of an application layer, a DPI layer, where we know exactly what the applications are in those packets. But also we can apply this and measure this over those services that we haven't been able to in the past, like the internet. If we remember, the internet is still and is the Wild West. There's no quality of service, there's no priority on there. It's literally you send traffic and hope it gets there. So by having these SLAs and being able to write and measure these SLAs end to end certainly allows us to measure those paths and respond when there are any issues and events over those that have a negative impact to the users. So parameters here such as measuring packet loss and round trip time and jitter are certainly what I'm talking about there, where we're measuring that experience. Some of the results of those SLAs for a moment here are, you can see here that this application Dropbox is a business critical app for this organization. You can see there in the sort of the leftmost circle, the application performance, the scale, the axes on that are throughput, latency, packet loss, end-to-end delay, and jitter. And most of the metrics are within the normal bounds of what we would expect or require out of that app. However, we see there the packet loss has actually breached through our level or our SLA level for that application. And from here, we can take a multitude of actions, maybe simply rerouting it or sending it over an alternate path that we know will perform for this app, or maybe we apply some other traffic optimization techniques to those apps as they go. And the important point here is this is real-time measured based on the users as they're using those applications. So this is the system knowing in real time, how is Dropbox actively performing. So you can kind of start to see then how we can get on the front foot now, where we might be able to run, rather than waiting for users to raise help desk tickets and complain about issues, where we can have these reports run on a morning basis, 9 a.m. each day or every second day. Show us the top sites across the business that are breaching SLAs right now, and show us those top applications that are breaching and the users that are breaching those SLAs, so that we can respond appropriately and proactively reach out and understand why that may have been occurring. And yeah, just some examples there of some of those SLA reporting pieces that I just touched on. So yeah, running the top sites not meeting SLA, or show us the sites that there's a lot of link switch events. This is a common one that can expose whether there's maybe an undersized WAN service at a particular branch, because if there are applications switching paths frequently, then that can maybe demonstrate an underlying issue that certainly wasn't known about before. The perceived response of users is, the network's just slow, or the applications are just really slow. So yeah, that's how we can certainly become more proactive. And where to from here? So for folks that may have joined us on the earlier Juniper Mist Wi-Fi and Marvis AI conversation session, this is an example of where we're applying this SLA, this concept of measuring users' experience right down into the branch, where we're measuring how long individual devices take to connect to either the wireless network or the wired network, and what are their throughputs on the network, how do they compare against other types of users that are using, whether that's an Apple iPhone or a Microsoft Windows laptop or a Surface tablet. Is that user an outlier, or do those issues impact a whole class of users, if you will? So certainly as you see this year progress, you'll certainly see more coherence come together between our SLA data and reporting from the SD-WAN side into this Marvis engine as well. And as I say, it's all about data. So from a user's perspective, I alluded to this one a moment ago actually, that there's all sorts of data that's in the network today that we're certainly not really using or taking much notice of. So if you think about that moment, that idea of a user connecting to the network, they go through a few different transitions, state transitions, if you will. Firstly, they'll attach to the network, then they'll DHCP for an IP address, they'll get that, then they'll do an look up on their gateway. Then certainly for mobile devices like iPhone and Android, they'll do some DNS requests to try and reach Apple and Google.com, so that they show you that little Wi-Fi icon to show that it's connected. So if we watch for all of those events occurring and happening, then it allows us to respond when we see an event not take place in the time period that perhaps we believe it should have. and it can maybe expose problems with DHCP servers or problems with DNS servers, or maybe a problem up over the WAN or the application itself. So you can see here just through this graphic that, yeah, this is just a visual representation of that, those users going through states, transitions and changes over time. And that's what we're talking about, capturing and measuring that type of data. So what are some of the components if you're new to Juniper, and yeah, if you haven't heard of some of our product names out there, yeah, we've got that management and orchestration layer here, which is the Contrail SD-WAN or CSO controller that we define all of our SLAs, and we do all of the site modeling for the SD-WAN endpoint, etc. And then you have the branch side, certainly, that we've talked about quite a bit, which is the SRX series, the 300 series and above. So those devices have all sorts of connection types, LTE baked in, Ethernet, VDSL type connections, that sort of stuff, all baked into that layer. And then the other layer of this is the hub side, where we build these overlay tunnels to, so that we can measure the performance of the applications over those paths. That's how we are deriving that telemetry over services that we couldn't derive telemetry from previously. And the other elements here are certainly the EX portfolio, the switching portfolio, and the MIST Wi-Fi side. These are the layers that are giving us the telemetry right down inside of the branch. So for us, we view this as we've kind of alluded to here, a software-defined enterprise, if you will. Rather than just being an SD-WAN singular piece of the puzzle, we're talking about pulling multiple layers of the ecosystem here together, so that we can have a more intelligent view on answering that original question of what are the users' experiences across the network, and show me who the top users are that are having a bad experience, so that we can respond appropriately. And by all means, security needs to be considered and baked in at all layers here. So as Juniper, we're leveraging the SRX platform, which is a platform that we've had in the market for some time now, as a next generation firewall product. What has come more recently are those telemetry aspects and all of the SD-WAN functionality. But if we think for a moment that if we're starting to introduce services like internet services to branches that haven't previously had them, then we want to make sure that we secure that, because anywhere that an internet service pops up or comes into the organization needs to have appropriate security controls applied there. So what we're talking about here are all these advanced next-gen type firewall services that allow us to distribute that all the way out through the enterprise. Maybe before that was centralized in a data center, whereas now it means we can apply security right out at the edge and respond to threats a lot faster. Think for example, like a USB stick walking through the front door of the organization or the business. Maybe that USB stick's done the rounds at a staff member's kid's school. Picked up something that it shouldn't have. By having that next generation firewall SD-WAN endpoint out there means that we can stop the lateral spread of that quickly. So just a quick wrap up so that we can get into some Q&As there, some question and answers. So hopefully, yeah, you've seen a bit of an idea here of how Juniper, we're tackling SD-WAN a bit differently. Yes, SD-WAN has an important part to play in the architecture for us, but it's not where we end, it's not where we stop. We certainly are taking that SD-WAN concept right through to the LAN environment for the switches, right into the wireless side. We call the LAN side wired and wireless assurance. Certainly, if you didn't see the MIST session earlier in today, please have a look at some of the online materials for that. There's a lot of great info out there. But yeah, the centralized UI here is certainly where we build all of that logic. We've been tested independently out there by EANTC as well, so we know this thing can scale massively up to 10,000 endpoints. Service providers, if there are service providers on the call here that want to build managed service offerings for your enterprise customers, then these portal and software can certainly be white labeled and used with your own branding so that you can offer those services as a managed offer. And I certainly said there, the CPE range is quite unique for us. The SRX, being the SRX, is hardened in the industry for some time, and it has a large multitude of WAN service types like LTE baked into the box without needing an additional bridge or bringing in fiber services or Ethernet services, VDSL services, etc. And we just mentioned about security as well. That one's certainly an important point. And the last one here that I'll talk about is the reliability side as well, which certainly is quite different because we are leveraging something for sites or branches that need to cluster devices or have a resilient branch. We have this concept of clustering the SRX together in a stateful manner so that if one of those devices were to fail, then the second one is there, synchronized, ready to go to pass traffic as soon as it needs to. So that is, I wanted to just call that out because it is quite unique. Certainly if you look at some other HA models out there, may not be as stateful in nature. So yeah, I guess that's sort of it from me. I wanted to do a bit of a call out. Come and give it a try. Hit up the www.juniper.net/SDWAN page. You can get access to a portal there that you can certainly have a bit of a click around, have a look at, understand some of the tech that I've been talking about there. And certainly we've got a bunch of demo videos and like 15 features in 15 minutes. Have a look at some of those bottom links there. The Juniper.net/SDWAN playlist and wireless demos as well. Because that certainly gives you a really nice quick snapshot into some of these features that we've been talking about. And for anyone that wants extra training, we do have official SD-WAN courses that are out there and available now. So please, yeah, take a look. And with that, let's do some Q&A.
Awesome, Lee. Thanks for that. That was very insightful and a great look into the SD-WAN play with Juniper. We haven't had too many questions come through at all. I just wanted to pose one. Do you see any, or do you have any examples of enterprises that specifically have been using this and have had some good sort of stories to come out of it?
Yeah, definitely. I guess two that come to mind are one, retailer particularly, where they were looking to have some cost savings across WAN services, where they started to introduce higher bandwidth internet like NBN for the local Australian market or UFB for New Zealand, so that they could start to leverage those additional services. And so they entered it as a cost measure, but then ended up realizing that all the telemetry side was actually where they saw most of their benefit. Because their initial program was life cycling old hardware and trying to drive cost savings at the same time. That one's a big one. But yeah, a university, similarly, I alluded to that AI or this AI engine that is Marvis that's measuring the user's experience. That one, they thought that was a little bit of a gimmick going into the program, but then at the end, their IT operations team actually go to that tool to ask and run the reports and ask it questions on who are the unhappy users before they even take a step further in troubleshooting. So that one is out there publicly. You can look up Dartmouth College, for example, is a really good video reference of that one. I see a couple of questions actually roll through. I don't know. There's this one here, which is for the SLA reporting to work, do we have multi-vendor support or it all has to be Juniper Mist? Certainly, yeah, from an SD-WAN standpoint, the SD-WAN needs to be Juniper there. There are some movements in the industry to do an open SD-WAN, if you will, but there's still, everyone builds it a little bit differently today, so there's still work to be done there. But certainly in the campus side, with pulling in telemetry from third-party switches, with Mist and Marvis, we can do that there with LLDP and open protocol. So no, that doesn't have to be full Juniper that way.
I see you've got another one there. Are the Contrail Orchestrator and the Mist Cloud the same thing? If not, is this the roadmap to merge them?
Yeah, so no, yeah, good question. So no, they aren't the same thing. They're a little bit different. So the Contrail Orchestrator is a little bit more to do with certainly the SD-WAN side of it, and the Mist Cloud is more of the LAN and Wi-Fi side at the moment. So certainly the AI engine of Mist is baked into Mist there. And what we're looking at doing is actually integrating the two more so over time, so that at the moment you can see like access points from the Contrail cloud. You can click through to the Mist cloud from the Contrail cloud. And as I say, this year we'll be starting to get some of that data. We're aiming to get some of the data from Contrail and SD-WAN over into the Marvis AI engine. So yeah, I wouldn't say necessarily that there's a clear roadmap to just exclusively merge the two, but they're certainly coming closer over time.
And Steve mentioned, brought up a question there. Any licenses requirements or requirements on licensing?
Yeah, certainly. So yeah, the licenses are based on sort of class of device, if you will. So it doesn't make sense for us to charge the same price for a small device as it may for a large data center device. So we've broken them up into classes of devices. So we've got this class A, B, C, etc. And we just license it for the endpoint if appropriate for that. And that entitles you to the SD-WAN cloud and entitles you to enable the SD-WAN telemetry and visibility on those endpoints. And for the Mist and the Marvis piece, we have wide and wireless assurance licenses available there.
I mean, this whole thing is just going to make people so much more proactive around the networking piece and the management thereof, just to make it's a hell of a lot easier to use and less sort of clunky, if you want to call it. So it really is streamlining the process.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. And to be honest, we're just kind of getting started too. I think these AI and these machine learning models, I guess there's a lot of hype out there around that stuff in the industry. I like to see it boil down to real-world use cases and scenarios. So, I think it's kind of really early in that journey.
That's perfect, man. Well, I don't know, we've still got quite a few people on the call. I don't know if there's any other questions from anyone out there in your bubbles. If you want to pop them through, we do have Lee for a couple more minutes. I know we have gone over, but it has been very informative. So thank you so much, Lee, for sticking on the call.
Yeah, no, thank you.
And I mean, if there isn't any more calls, please feel free to reach out to me as well. My name's Gareth. I'm the vendor business manager for Juniper at Westcon. So work closely with the Juniper team in country here as well. So very, very keen to expand on these conversations with you. As Lee said, training and anything like that, whatever you guys need to help you take on this journey, we're more than happy to work with you guys. So I think that's it for the day. I don't think there's too many more questions, but if you can please rate the seminar afterwards, there will be a Q&A session or a Q&A. There's a form that you can fill up. That would be greatly appreciated. And enjoy the rest of the day. Lee, thank you so much for joining us and for that great prezo. Really cool, mate. Thank you so much, and we'll catch up soon.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Yes.